Hello, I'm back again. It's Ken Oppel. I'm the same. My hair's a bit longer. I'm going to read Pig and the Whale today. This is a picture book, early picture book of mine, which I cooked up during the years I was living in Newfoundland. Lots of sea shanties in Newfoundland. Famous one, Jack Was Every Inch a Sailor, was kind of the inspiration for this. But in my book, it got transmogrified into a story about a young girl called Peg, who you will meet in just a second. Illustrations by Terry Widener. So here we go. Peg and the Whale. Peg was born upon the bright blue sea. There she is, swinging from a bucket in the rigging of her parents' fishing boat. Whoa, there she is. And there she is up there, pulling lines and hauling sheets and dropping anchor and gutting fish along with the best of them. A big strapping lass, Peg was, and she wasn't one to do things in half measures. Anything she turned her hand to, she was good at. But she wanted more than that. She wanted big, she wanted better, she wanted best. As you can see, she's a pretty competent fisher. Peg wanted nothing less than to be the world's best fisherman. Now, Peg had caught pretty much every fish that swam. She'd hooked herring, halibut, haddock, and hagfish. She'd hauled smelt, sole, sculpin, stickleback, and sturgeon. She caught a shark once, but threw it back because it was too small. But Peg had her sights set higher, you see. She wanted to catch something really big. She wanted to catch herself a whale. A whale, her father said, is not a fish, Peg. It's a mammal. But Peg would have none of that foolishness. If it swims and spends more time in water than out, it's a fish, and I'm going to catch me one. Well, Peg was pushing 7, and she figured it was high time she made something of herself. So one night in harbor, she packed up her fishing pole, she left her parents a note, and signed on with the whale ship Viper. The Viper shipped out for Labrador that very night. It was big and oily and covered in barnacles. The crew was a mean-looking bunch. And first mate Bart Maxwell could curse and spit better than all the others put together. I want to catch me a whale, Peg said. Is that right? Said Maxwell. Can you throw a harpoon? No, but I can hook, bait, and cast a line quicker than you can change your mind, said Peg. Bart Maxwell laughed and set her to work, swabbing decks. But Peg had a chance to prove herself the very next morning. There was a stiff wind blowing, and the captain's hat was knocked right off his head and into the waves. A doubloon for the sailor who gets my hat, the captain cried. Bart Maxwell threw the first harpoon, missed the hat by yards. Curse the wind, he shouted. He threw again and again he missed. A pox on these scurvy harpoons, he swore, snatching up another. I'll do it, said Peg, bold as can be. She grabbed her fishing rod and cast her line. The hook sank to the hat first try, and Peg reeled it in. There she is, casting her line. The captain's hatless head. Bart Maxwell gave Peg a look that would fry fish. Nice trick, my girl, he growled, but I don't think you'll be catching a whale with that rod of yours. The next day, the whale came. There she blows, hollered a sailor from the crow's nest. Before the men could even get to the whaleboats, Peg was at the side with her fishing rod. She swung that rod back over her shoulder and cast with all her might. The whale took the hook, and the line played out faster than a tune from a jack-in-the-box. I've got her, Peg shouted. She tied herself to the ship's mast and held tight. Well, the mast bent nearly double, and that whale pulled the Viper through the ocean on a Nantucket sleigh ride. The lass has hooked herself a whale, the sailors cried. She's reeling it in, they said. She's reeling in a whale. Nice fishing, girl, said Bart Maxwell, and in a flash he cut the rope holding Peg to the mast. Peg sailed through the air, skipping over the waves after the whale, still holding on to the fishing rod. That's just as well, she thought. That old ship was only slowing me down. And then the whale stopped. Aha, said Peg, plain tuckered out. And she started to reel in. This whale knows she's met her match. The whale turned and came at Peg, big as a blue mountain. I've got ya, Peg cried. It turned out the whale had got Peg, and Peg got swallowed whole. There was a tremendous roar of water, and she was spluttering and splashing, tumbling and thrashing right down the whale's gullet and into its stomach. It was black as night without moon or stars, only blacker. Peg lit a waterproof match. She reckoned there were enough planks and busted beams down there to set up shop as a carpenter. A cod slapped at her feet. Seeing as she felt a bit peckish, she made herself a little fire, hung up her wet clothes to dry, and fried up some fish. After she'd eaten, she got dressed. She figured the only way out was up, so she took some of that busted up wood and the thigh bone from an old pirate's skeleton and hammered herself a ladder. Peg climbed back up the whale's gullet and into its mouth. She felt a big draft coming from overhead. The whale sighed and whoosh! Peg was blasted right out of its mouth, right through the blowhole. She reckoned she was about 30 feet in the air before she came back down and landed on the whale's back. Now she could see what was what. The Viper was nowhere in sight. It's just as well. Peg thought, I didn't care much for the crew. All in all, she was mighty pleased. She'd wanted to catch herself a whale, and here she'd gone and done it, riding a whale through the Labrador Sea. But after an hour or so, she figured it was probably time to be moving on. Whale, she said, looks like you're my ride back to shore. That's a pretty nice ride. But the whale had had a mind of its own and took Peg on a tour of the Arctic. Peg kept warm by doing jumping jacks and singing sea shanties. When it got too cold or the whale decided to dive under the ice, Peg just jumped back down the blowhole and slid into the whale's stomach. It was damp and a tad smelly down there, but nothing Peg wasn't used to. And there were plenty of fresh fish for the eating. She built herself a little bunk. There's the bunk. It's a pretty nice place. She's done it very nicely. She built herself a little bunk to nap in. It was just like home, really. Darndest thing if she didn't start feeling a bit fond of that whale. But Peg was also getting just a mite bored, and if truth be told, a little homesick. Well, she went back to work, sawing and hammering, and made herself the longest rudder in the world to steer that stubborn whale. Didn't look like much, but it did the trick. She got the whale turned back south. A few days later, Peg caught sight of a ship on the horizon. Was it the Viper? No. It was her mother and father's fishing boat. Peg gave the whale a little pat. Good work, Peg said. The whale swam alongside the boat, and Peg stepped aboard. She was a bit stiff and frozen around the edges, but none the worse for wear. The whale blew up a big geyser of water and dived down into the sea. Peg, we were a little bit worried, her mother said, but it looks like you went and caught yourself a whale, said her father. Well, you know, Peg said, a whale is not a fish, so I figure I'd let it go. Oh, very good then, said her father. Peg stayed on fishing for a while, but she was pushing 8, and she figured it was high time she made something of herself. After all, she wanted big, she wanted better, she wanted best. And she thought she'd try her hand at something new. And there she is, on her way somewhere interesting. So that's Pig and the Whale. Illustrated by Terry Widener. In a little bit, I'll read you its sequel, Peg and the Yeti, illustrated by the remarkable Barbara Reed, with her illustrations in plasticine. But I hope you like that. Peg and the Whale. I hope you're all well.